Everyone has a story, but not everyone gets to tell it. Life gets busy. We talk, we text, but do we listen? Are you looking for real stories, raw and unchanged? Want to experience life through another's eyes, one story at a time? Daniel and Jenny have you covered. It's time to start the conversations, and that's the #truth.
Today's guest is Tom Dahlborg. With almost 40 years of extensive healthcare leadership experience, Tom is a voice for relationship-centered and compassionate care, servant leadership, and quality and systems improvement. Tom and the Dahlborg HealthCARING Leadership Group positions leaders in healthcare and beyond to engage heart and mind in all they do so that they are well positioned to embrace and embody compassion, care, and love while leveraging science and evidence to honor their callings and achieve betterment for all. A leader and advisor, he is also an internationally recognized speaker and writer with an expertise in health caring models, heart and mind communication, courageous vulnerability, systems thinking and improvement, stopping bullying, adverse childhood experiences, and bringing love and action to all we do. Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're super excited to have you on the program.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. It's great to see you both and to be here with you.
We have been following along on your journey. You've been so active on so many fronts. You know, you're passionate about stopping bullying, about kindness in healthcare, about just making systems better in general for everyone. And one of the things that I notice about that is you just really put your heart into everything that you do. And there's a unique quality about you that's a little bit magnetic that makes people want to jump on board with the idea of kindness. And I know that sounds simple because shouldn't we all want to be kind? But people get busy and it's hard to kind of stop sometimes and see the things that are going on around us. And so that being said, what kind of started all of this journey for you? You know, have you always been an advocate? Has it always been within you to say, this is wrong, or this has to be better, or I need to stand up for this? Or did it happen one day?
Well, first of all, thank you for that feedback. I really appreciate that. The short answer is I don't know. We all are on our paths, we're on our journeys, and we all make incredible mistakes. And just like everyone, I've had certain things happen to me in my life that help me to see, maybe something is wrong, or maybe I'm doing something wrong, or maybe there's an opportunity to make things better. And so I guess throughout my life, throughout my career, I've always recognized those opportunities and, quite frankly, haven't always capitalized on making things better. But as I've gotten older, I think I've gotten better at that, to both recognize it and then figure out, is this something we can impact? And if we can impact, how do we go about doing it? Who needs to be part of the process? Who's our community to address this particular thing? And so I've just tried to embrace that and recognize that I'm going to fail often. And a good friend of mine over at the Institute for Healthcare Improvement had used the term fail forward. You're going to fail, learn from it, and make things better. And so I've tried to embrace that as I've, continued on my own journey as well.
That's awesome. One of the things I noticed when you were talking about that, which is a big wisdom, is, finding your community, because it takes a village, right?
It certainly does. And what I've noticed about community is oftentimes we think it has to, community needs to look like us. Absolutely not. And in fact, when we embrace a larger community and we allow ourselves to be embraced by a larger community, there's greater opportunity to see through different lenses, to get that full 360, to recognize that we don't know it all and that others have pieces that can make our ability to have an impact more productive. And so embracing that larger community has made a big difference. And I'll give you a quick story. When I was in Maine, I was part of the Hanley Health Leadership Group. And there was a fellow there, Dr. Ekole Kalawale. And I remember, he and I became friends. And so I refer to him as Bank. And what I learned from Bank, who's from Nigeria, is that he just had this incredible wisdom that I never even thought about. And that in Maine at that time, he was being put on a lot of different programs, a lot of different committees because of the color of his skin. And he and I had this real good heart to heart. And he said, Tom, I know that's why I'm here. However, or that's why I'm here from their perspective. However, I'm going to use this opportunity to educate them. I'm going to use this opportunity to learn myself and educate them. And he was and still is brilliant at that. And again, I learned that, there's going to be barriers and there's going to be challenges. And yet, if we stick to who we are from an integrity perspective and follow our beliefs and our values, just like Bank did and does, you can still make a difference. And you can create community, even when maybe the community wasn't necessarily to truly embrace you. You can position yourself to be embraced. And he has, and he does. And I still am good friends with him and still work with him because of his character. And so again, that larger community is so important to make a difference.
Yeah, that's, there's so much to be said about not only the large community, but then the small community as well. There's that micro, macro, we have our close-knit people who support us and encourage us and keep us focused. And then that bigger community where we all lend that helping hand to move forward. Do you notice a certain character quality that helps move people forward in growth that you see on teams that are productive at making change?
I would say that, now let me say it this way. I've heard often that the definition of integrity is doing the right thing when no one's looking. Now, I've heard that and I said, okay, that makes sense to me. However, to me, that bar is pretty low. To me, the definition of integrity is doing the right thing always. And it's doing the right thing, especially when it's unpopular, especially when you're on an island, especially. And so I would say that it really is, there's all different facets, but the one I'll hone in on is integrity. When you're willing to take the bullet or the arrow or just stand up, and maybe you're alone, or maybe it's that micro community, it's a smaller community, and the larger one hasn't embraced it yet, like Bank did. When you're willing to do that, people may not agree with you, but they'll respect you more in many cases. And I found that as long as I'm willing to be authentic in those areas that I choose to focus on, and maybe stand against the wind a little bit occasionally, eventually people will come along. So back in 2008, I think it was, I was talking about relationship-centered care. I was talking about heart. I was talking about compassion and kindness and love and healthcare. And I was talking to hospitals throughout the state of Maine and beyond that. And I would get people looking at me, sideways, like I was nuts, because, it's all about the science. It's all about the evidence. And what I found now is more and more people are realizing it's about the both and. It's about the science. It's about the evidence. It's about the research. It's about the important things there. And it's about the compassion and the empathy and the kindness and the love. And more research and science is starting to show the impact of compassion, kindness, empathy, and love in healthcare. So so it takes some time, but eventually people will catch on. And quite frankly, there are other stances I've taken that ended up being wrong. And I learned from that too.
I had a question, if you don't mind, related to the doctor from Nigeria. Did you say his name was Dr. Bank?
Bankole Kalawale.
Okay. You said that he put himself in a position to be embraced. How does putting yourself in a position to be embraced differ from having to be right?
I think it's all the difference in the world. And I think it's whether people were going to think he was right or not, he was going to be who he was. He was going to be authentic. He was going to be that definition of integrity we just talked about. He was going to do the right thing, even if he wasn't at the table for the right reason. He was going to serve and lead to make things better, even again, if he wasn't right at the table for the right reason. And I think by doing so, again, just like I talked about with love and healthcare, over time, people realized, oh my, this isn't just a person of color. This is a human being who is brilliant and kind and caring and has integrity and can help us make a difference. And I think it really changed a lot of minds and maybe opened up hearts a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like it really did.
And
Yeah, we did this presentation together, and we were talking about, as we are today, shortages in healthcare as far as physicians and nurses and so forth. And we were talking about cultural respect, cultural competency, and how to embrace, just like we're talking about here. And as part of this presentation, he had brought in this wooden mask from Africa, and he held this mask up, and he's got this beautiful accent and this powerful voice, and he went around the room with this stating fairly loudly, "You don't know me, because all you're seeing is that mask. All you're seeing is my color, or all you're seeing is whatever, my title, my color, or whatever it might be." And really, through this dramatic presentation, really, I had people come up to me afterwards, and they went up to him, of course, too, to say how powerful that was and how that got them to think, oh my gosh, that surface reaction, that surface perspective is so limited and limits our ability to help others. When we can get beyond that mask, and we get to a place that, again, we can connect at a heart and mind level that gets to that point about being embraced, embracing others, and being able to, because at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, it's about impact. It's about, can we make things better for self and others? And when we do everything we just talked about, we can.
a lot of times that comes into play in schools and work in environment. It's just everywhere. And I know your son had an experience with bullying in school that definitely could have been very different for him, which is part of why you move forward on the bullying front. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It was, I remember when Tommy was 4 years old, and we lived in this neighborhood in Maine, and he asked to go over to a friend's house to play.
Mm-hmm.
And so the friend's house was right across from our driveway, right next door, so we could see out the window. He's 4, and we see the other friends out there. And so we said, sure, and goes over, and we watch him get up to the door, and then my bride and I, turn around, and then just a few moments later, Tommy comes bursting through our door, crying. I'm like, Tommy, what happened? We figured he fell, got hurt.
Yeah.
Something like that. And he said, Mommy, Daddy. And he went on, and eventually he got out that as his friends were lining up to go in the house, were being let in, the mother looked at Tommy, who was last in line, and said to him, Tommy, you can't come in. You're too big. He was a large frame child. He also had neurological challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And so devastated. And so for the longest time, Tommy was being bullied predominantly by adults. And so my bride and I thought, we were the worst parents ever. How can we allow this to happen? And I eventually started working with the National Institute for Children's Health Quality. And I had access to experts. And they said to me, no, it's not an aberration. This is fairly common. 47% of kids are being bullied by coaches and teachers and so on. And there's lots of stats around this. And so we try to figure out what's the pathway. And so we prayed about how can we help our son? Because it seemed like every strategy, every tactic we were implementing to help was making things worse.
Yeah.
Talking to the school, talking to the neighbors, these types of things. And so at one point, I think literally God was in my ear, and he said, Tommy's a big frame child. I gave him, that's my gift to him. How can he use his frame? And I mentioned before about a painting behind me, which was painted by Tommy Heinsohn from the Boston Celtics. And I'm named after Tommy Heinsohn. And Tommy Heinsohn got into painting because he was bullied as a child. And so I'm putting all these pieces together. I'm like, okay, a big frame child in basketball, a big frame person like a Charles Barkley back in the day, can do one thing, many things really, really well, but one thing in particular is can box out and rebound. And so Tommy wanted to get into sports. And so I took him outside with God in my ear, and we just started talking about basketball, just started playing. And I started talking about Larry Bird and how he wasn't the most gifted athlete physically, and yet he did great things because he cared, he wanted to help his team, and always tried to get better. And I started talking about Charles Barkley and his frame and how he could use that to get the ball, and having the ball helps your team.
Yeah.
And so I showed him, and I have one really important skill in basketball when teaching rebounding. I can't shoot. I'm terrible at shooting. So when I would shoot, I would miss quite often. And so my son was learning how to rebound off of all my misses. And so eventually he signs up for basketball, and great. And I've taught him how to rebound. And I remember that first game and how he was boxing out and rebounding. And this child who wasn't allowed to play with other children for the longest time because he was too big, was now receiving accolades from his coach, from other coaches from other teams. I had a high school coach come up to me and say, how's an 8-year-old, he was 8 at the time, boxing out and rebounding when I can't get my high school kids to box out and rebound? Wow. And it wasn't about, I want my son to be this great basketball, but I wanted my son to get a win. I wanted my son to understand the gift God gave him, and how we all have these gifts and they may look differently on different people, and how we can use these gifts to help others. And you learned how, in that particular case, just as one example, how to use his big frame to help his team. And I remember him smiling after one of the particular game. And it was just so wonderful. And I ended up becoming a coach, and I coached him and his kid and the other kids. And I probably did that for 10 or 12 years. And I learned all about basketball and about the X's and O's, but more importantly, I learned about the non-X and O's part of coaching and so forth. And Jenny, I know you know this. So I wrote a book called Big Kid in Basketball and the Lessons He Taught His Father and Coach. And I remember I didn't mean to write that book. I was writing, first I was journaling, then I turned it into a blog. And I said, Tommy, what do you think? Should we share this? He said, Dad, let's share the story because it will help others. Yeah. And so we did that as a blog, and I didn't really publicize it, but I put it out there. And I had all these calls for, write a book, turn this into a book. And so I eventually did. And next thing I know, Channel 8 in Portland's doing a story on it. And I'm speaking around the country and then beyond around it. And so that was great. And I got to teach what I learned. Not that I'm an expert, but I learned through this experience.
Yeah.
And then, and Jenny, I'm not sure if you know this, a few years ago, after the book had been published and all the speaking and stuff, Tommy came out to my bride and I on our deck in Maine. And he said, I need to tell you something. And he said, when I was in 4th grade, now again, bullying started when he was about 4 years old, got into basketball around 8 and beyond. When I was in 4th grade, the pain was so bad, I didn't want to live anymore. And I put a belt around my neck. I had no idea. And again, talking about failing forward, thank God he did not go through with that. Mm-hmm. But it really showed me personally that I didn't know what I even thought I knew at that time. And I needed to learn a lot more. And so I have continued to learn from experts, learn from my son, learn from others, and wrote a follow-up to the Big Kid in Basketball, a second edition of that, which gets more into those details and additional learnings about what to do and what not to do and so forth. And there are children. I mean, the suicide rate, if I remember correctly, I think it's 9 times for a child who's been bullied. It's 9 times more likely that they will commit or at least try to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. So we think about bullying. Oh, toughen up, people will say, or whatever it might be, or that, it's life and death. Right. It literally is life and death. And the impact, bullying is now considered an average childhood experience, so it's now considered one of the ACEs. The impact on adults, the bullying when they're a child to adulthood is profound, mental health wise and addiction wise and so forth. So you asked me about why I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate because of those experiences. Yeah. And I've been blessed to hear and learn from others about what bullying has done, and quite frankly, how we can make a difference together, like you said, in community.
Mhm. That's, an incredible story. And, one, I'm sorry that your son went through that. I know it's been a lot of years, but gosh, that's
It's awful.
an awful thing to go through, and that you guys went through that as parents. And I'm also sorry that you're not alone, and that there's a lot of other people who go through this very same thing. Um, I did get your book that you sent me. Thank you so much. I started reading it, and I have to say, even right in the very beginning of the book, I'm reading along and I'm going through this story, and you do a really excellent job of kind of pulling in the conversation and the narrative of what was going on. And, I'm swallowing down the lump in my throat, and I'm trying not to cry as I'm reading it out loud to Dan, because we often will do that. We read books together a lot. And it's painful to think about somebody being hurt, so to speak, somebody feeling pain because of a lack of acceptance, or somebody not seeing how beautiful they are, or their value, or their worth. And I know you say, gosh, there's always so much more to learn. And I agree, that's true, but also wanted to say that the work that you did, putting your first book out there, be it a blog first, before it became a book, opened a door and a bridge, and led to your son, telling you, hey, this happened. And that whole process just leads to one more piece of the work being done, and another piece of the work being done, and how much more powerful that work can be. I'm going to cry thinking about it, how much more powerful that work can be, that you're together in tandem, the parent, the son, who both experienced both sides of what it's like to deal with such tragedy, because it's a tragedy when somebody gets treated that way. But how's he doing now?
He
And how old is he now?
he's 25,
Okay.
and he's used the experience, and so he has been in therapy for years.
Mhm.
And what I appreciate lots about him. One specific thing I'll highlight is he has he started a podcast called Strength to Vulnerability.
Oh,
And one of the
awesome.
thank you. And one of the key aspects of it was to address the stigma
Mhm.
of seeking help, mental health help,
Mhm.
and especially for young men,
Mhm.
but for everybody. And so, long story short, he does a great deal to heal himself with help, and to let others know that you know it's it's a strength to ask for help. It's
Yeah.
a strength to seek help.
It is.
Exactly. And there's so many that think just the opposite, and that's a message that I think many of us have heard all our lives. Asking for help is weakness, and no. And so to your point, he's doing great. He's going to get married next year. They
Oh,
just got
wow.
Jackson. Thank you. And he continues to help others, and also more recently, um, he's now coaching, and
Oh, wow.
he's
Cool.
yeah, I'm so excited about it. So his first practice was say Saturday, so it was earlier this week,
Okay.
and it was just so wonderful. We were emailing and texting and calling, and he's asking for advice and input, and I helped whenever I could. And then he showed me. He goes, "Dad, I got my first challenge," and it was a text from a child who's sick, and COVID and so forth. This is what I'm planning on saying. It was brilliant. It was beautiful. It was just so articulate and caring, and supportive and encouraging, and direct. And it was like this beautiful balance. So he's doing great. He's doing great.
Awesome.
Sounds like he'd make a great podcaster.
Absolutely.
Now, what's
Absolutely.
the name of his podcast again, and where can people find it?
Strength through vulnerability.
Mhm.
He has taken a sabbatical from it. Maybe late last year, he took a sabbatical from it. But it's still out there on Apple and Spotify. But if you just type in Strength through THRU, vulnerability, you'll find it very easily.
All right.
Nice. So you talk about in your book that he has he's the epitome of empathy and has that really good quality about him. Through your experience and, everything that you've gone through, what would you say is the biggest piece of using your pain for progress? How do you get to that point of, we went through this, but now, we're able to change direction? I know getting help, having support, those are some of the things, but internally, was there something that said, that's it, enough's enough, we have to turn the table here, we need to do something?
In healthcare, there's this, you may have heard of PFACs, Patient and Family Advisory Councils.
Mhm.
Within health systems, those that do things right, they'll create this PFAC where they'll bring in patients to partner with healthcare leadership and clinicians and so forth to make things better, to improve patient engagement, patient experience, quality, whatever it might be. So I've had the opportunity over the years to help these health systems create these PFACs. And you made me think of this when you asked the question. One of the biggest mistakes when creating a PFAC is that a lot of times these health systems will engage patients and or families that are still in the middle of their own healing. Maybe not physical healing, maybe it's still the emotional healing. And so the PFAC becomes a place for venting or for addressing that specific item as opposed to the bigger picture of betterment for all, including the specific item. And so a key I have found both with Tommy and bullying and with the PFAC, and I've actually taken the PFAC from the healthcare system and now have created the Player and Family Advisory Council for youth sports and so forth. And then the performance arts, the performer and family, to take all the best practices to create these safe places for the right discussions to take place for betterment. But I'd say the key is that we all need to get to that place where we have that micro, I like that, the micro community that can give us feedback, that can allow us to recognize, am I still in that place of I'm still emotionally distraught, mentally distraught, physically, am I ready to now take what I've learned from my own experience to create betterment? Or am I still needing to focus on me to help me heal before I can get into that place that I can actually help to make things better? And I think for Tommy and for me as a father and as a coach and so forth, it took a lot of time. And I'd say that was one of the biggest lessons was healing takes time. And it's going to be different for everybody, just like everything is.
Yeah.
But having that trusted group, that trusted micro community to help us get to that place of, okay, now, just like it was my father, and it was actually a woman in Northern Maine who reached out to me and said, Tom, you need to turn this into a book, because I was ready. God was saying, it's time to now, you've done your healing and I still heal, but now you're in a place that you can help others. And I think that's a key piece of it.
Mm-hmm. So your faith has obviously played a lot in your journey. And sometimes, when God gives you a word, just curiosity, how does he tend to do that? Are you kind of be still, wait for it? Is he slow down? Is he go now? What's God's language with you?
Well,
based on your expression, you have some experience with this.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. In this, in my heart book, my from heart to head and back again book, there was a chapter that I decided to leave out, and predominantly it was because of a conversation my bride and I had. God and I fight a lot.
Jacob did too.
So, yeah, God has his will and I have my will. And when I was really sick with my heart and I was basically living on a couch and not being able to walk stairs, and God was telling me lots of different things and I wasn't listening. One day I was like, God, you said I need to do X, Y, and Z. I got this. our exercise equipment was upstairs. I could barely get off the couch. My bride was out in the driveway talking to her friend. My kids were at school and elsewhere. And so I dragged myself off the couch and slowly dragged myself up 2 flights of stairs and went into the room where the exercise equipment is. And I could see out the window. My wife was out there and I could barely breathe and I was in so much pain. And, I was, at that point, getting ready for, to get in line for a heart transplant, as the doctor had said. And I decided I was going to work out. And so I'm working out.
With your wife outside, not knowing you're upstairs.
Bingo.
As a wife, I can safely say I bet she was not happy with you.
Yeah. And I'm looking out the window and then trying to do a little bit more. And, it didn't last very long, believe me. And then I crawl back to the top of the stairs. And I'm like, I can't get down.
Oh, no.
And so I said, well, I can wait here until my bride comes in, or I can try to get away with this and somehow get back to that couch.
Oh, no.
And so, being the smart man, as my wife would say that I am, I decide that the best way to get down is to roll.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
So I roll myself down 2 flights of stairs before my bride gets back in. And I crawl, my dog's with me, and I crawl eventually back to the couch. And I'm just covered in sweat. And now I'm sure bruising and scratches and so forth. And but I never told her.
Oh my God.
Until she read that draft chapter of the book. But this was me fighting with God.
Yeah.
It was like, no, it's not your way this time. It's my way. I'm a father. I'm a parent. I have a team at work. I'm helping veterans, and there's no way I'm done, because I was told I'd never work again at this point. And I'm like, this is mine. I got this. And so I would say the way I typically learn from God, unfortunately, is we battled it out. And of course, God always wins. But eventually I'll get the message. And sometimes it takes basically falling down, controlled fall, maybe a couple flights of stairs. But just to finish that story. So when I wrote the first draft of the book, the hot book, and I was reading chapter by chapter, quite frankly, I forgot that I had that in there.
Yeah.
And I'm reading it to my wife, my bride, and she's just gone. And I see the smile, and she has a beautiful smile, just going. And I knew I was in trouble. And so that chapter is an outtake from the book.
That's funny.
That was the fictional chapter. Just kidding.
That's right.
I just put that in there to see what you'd say. Did you know that you had a heart condition? Did your symptoms come on all at once?
I had a heart murmur when I was younger. My ANA would be through the roof on occasion, and the doctors in the healthcare system, basically, they couldn't figure it out. And then because of a number of orthopedic surgeries and so forth, I was put on a new medication, Vioxx. And Vioxx had gone through all the testing and the research, and it tends to take between 7 and 17 years for medication to go to market after all that research.
Yeah.
Now, we ended up taking Vioxx off the market because it adversely impacted hearts. And so, long story short, I didn't know. There was something underlying, but I didn't know. And then I ended up in the hospital, and the story goes from there.
Yeah. And now you're doing well, or?
Oh yeah, I'm doing great. I found the right pathway for me. And again, when you think about clinical research, be it for meds or other treatments, it's based on an average, and it's typically based on the average male. And so when we think about evidence-based medicine, the evidence is based on an average and based on an average male, most likely or most often. And so we have to be very, very careful that we combine that science and that evidence, which is good, with individualized patient care, understanding the individual patient, and then marrying the two. And so that was, again, another lesson learned from me is yes, we need that evidence and science, and we need the relationships. We need to understand people. We need to understand, talk about socioeconomic conditions, social terms of health. We need to understand the cultural influences, and so much more. So medicine and healthcaring needs to be far more than the science, and the science is incredibly important to it.
Mm-hmm. And you've actually been able to sort of merge both of your focuses together in that respect, the bullying, the healthcare, and bringing those two components into one. Have you noticed a big impact in the result, I guess, of doing that?
Short answer is yes. In fact, not too long ago, I was asked to present to the Mercy Health System in Massachusetts about bullying. And it was really, the feedback was wonderful, but it was really also powerful for me to hear the stories and to see, like I knew based on the literature, I knew based on the research, certain things. And to hear the stories and to hear the N of ones and to see how many of them married my son's experiences, those kids' experiences, the bullying, the abuse, the all the different factors that were driving the bad behaviors, to allow for not allow for approval of the behaviors, but the understanding of where they were coming from, so we could make a difference. And it was just really a tremendous opportunity for me, like I said, to continue to learn and on my own journey, so that I can ideally help others within the healthcare system, the educational system, and the sports system.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, we are very grateful for all the work that you are doing on all fronts. We think that the journey, watching all of it unfold, is incredible, and that you're making a really good impact. I have Big Kid in Basketball, From Heart to Head and Back Again. So if anybody wants to order those, where can they go?
So for the Big Kid in Basketball, go to tbkid.org.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of information, lots of resources. Plus, you can click a link that's easily accessible to actually purchase the book. Okay. And then for the hard book, you would go to health-caring.org, and same type of thing. Lots of information and resources, plus easy links to actually get the books themselves.
And you're on Instagram, you're on LinkedIn.
I am, and so it's it's really, LinkedIn's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I have met so many people. I'm an introvert. I'm a huge introvert. So technology is wonderful in that way. And so I've met so many people. I think I joined LinkedIn probably in 2010. And I have created friendships through this vehicle, through technology, to share ideas, share the relationships I'm in, health caring and so forth. And the impact that people have had on me and what they say that I've had on them has just been incredible. And it's just a reminder for me, so often when we think about health caring or in other spaces or healthcare, it's oftentimes we go to this place of it's all about technology. Mm-hmm. Technology is incredibly important. But I've always found that technology is not a solution. Technology is a tool to allow us to have relationship, to have these types of discussions. So it's not the solution, but it's a tool to allow us to make things better together in community. And I think when we see it that way and we embrace it that way, when we focus on betterment of others, self and others, we can really do magic together.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Anything else you want to share with our viewers? Well, you have the floor.
I appreciate that. So I have just begun a new book, and it's actually going to be a new book series.
Wow.
And the working title is The Shield. Mm-hmm. And what it's about, and again, this is through this whole journey, my goal is to, let me say it this way. I love comic books. I love Marvel movies and all that, Iron Man and all that. And yet, even when I was a child, I found that there was something a little off. And what I've learned over time is I find is we actually, through those vehicles, we're teaching, giving our agency away to somebody else, to a superhero, to someone outside of ourselves. And I want to create a message. The book series is focused on children, 8 to 13, 8 to 14 years old, that really instills the desire, the need, and the understanding that the divine lives within us. God touches us and gives us wisdom and heart and soul and so forth. So I want children to learn how to focus within to then bring forth goodness, because that goodness is in us, as opposed to without, which is looking for a superhero to help and make a difference.
Okay.
And I always try to stress with that, when we're focusing on the divine within, we're embracing our faith in God and so forth. And sometimes what that messaging is, just like my son learned, and he's taught so many others, is from a place of strength, we can ask for help.